The Democrats have been utterly humiliated with the smallest House majority in 80 years. In this video, we're going to take a look at the pathetic results for the Democrat House, how Democrats themselves are panicking over whether the razor-thin margin could even last the next few months, and how their seemingly unstoppable shift to the far left promises to render them a permanent minority party in the elections ahead. You are not going to want to miss this. Greetings, everyone. Great to be with you. Dr. Steve here. Yes, the doctor's in the house, ready to bring our latest escapades into the Democrats' futile attempts to thwart the unstoppable rise of a new conservative age. Now, if you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. We'd love to have you as a regular part of this channel. And let's give a huge shout out to the sponsor of this video, and that's the makers of the beautiful Fighter Flare flashlight. You're going to absolutely love this one. Now, one of the best things you can invest in for your protection when the lights go out is this 6-in-1 beauty, which comes with a 3,000 mAh solar-powered recharging battery equipped with a high and low beam light that you can see literally from miles away, and has an emergency strobe light. It has a compass. It has a wire, it has a rope cutter, it has an emergency glass breaker hammer, and a high-powered military-grade magnet. Man, it's all you need, right? And best of all, you get 30% off in celebration of Black Friday, but supply is limited. So don't wait, click on the link below and get your super awesome Fighter Flare flashlight today. All right, gang, let's dive right in here. While we still have races that have remained uncalled officially, you know, kind of like the presidential race, despite what the media is telling you, in addition, of course, to their telling you over the last 3 years that the Trump campaign colluded with Russia. Yes, that same media, the mainstream media, the one that told you that Biden was going to win Wisconsin by 17 points, the one that told you that Biden would win the popular vote by 12 points. Yes, that same mainstream media is now telling you that Biden is the president-elect. So while there are still elections yet to be decided, we know that the 2020 election was so bad for the Democrats that they currently have the smallest House majority in over 80 years. At least 10 Democrat incumbents were defeated on November 3rd, and fascinatingly, especially in light of the mainstream Marxist media's narrative of the Republican Party being the home of misogyny and sexism and white supremacy, all the gains that the GOP made, every one of the House seats that were flipped to the GOP was won by either a minority, female, or veteran candidate. There are now 219 Democrats in the House of Representatives as compared to 203 of the Republicans. In other words, Republicans are just a handful of seats away from taking the House. About 7 or 8 seats will do it. In fact, the margin here is so razor thin, you're going to love this. The margin is so thin that the New York Post is reporting that House leaders are discouraging Democrats from taking jobs within the possibly incoming Biden administration. That is, if he pulls off this fraud, this election sham, if he pulls it off, the Democrats' margin is so slim that House leadership is dissuading any House Democrat members from taking any kind of Biden position, because in effect, they'll end up losing their majority. That's how pathetic things are right now in the House for the Democrats. Bill Maher sees it. The ultra-liberal host of HBO's Real Time came out and said it bluntly. Half the nation sees the Democrats as basically being insane. Well, he put it this way. They simply don't come across as having any common sense to a huge swath of Americans. Listen to this from Bill Maher, because while he certainly can be odious and repulsive in some of the things that he says, I mean, the comments he made about Amy Coney Barrett, for example, were reprehensible, let alone ignorant to the point of absurdity. But regardless, listen to this. This is Mark. Quote, Democrats were supposed to flip the Senate. They didn't. They were supposed to flip state legislatures. Not one. And they lost seats in the House. In a year that was so much about making people aware of racism, their share of minority votes went down. The message to Democrats from so much of the country seems to be, we don't like Trump. By the way, that's not true, but we'll leave that aside. We don't like Trump, but we still can't bring ourselves to vote for you. Liberals can either write off half the country as irredeemable, or they can ask, what is it about a D next to a candidate's name that makes it so toxic? And listen to this. This is so good. He follows it up with this. Democrats kept saying in the campaign, you can't possibly think Trump is preferable to what we're selling. And many voters keep saying, yes, we can. In fact, our primary reason for voting for him is to create a bulwark against you. Because your side thinks silence is violence and looting is not. Because you're the party of chasing speakers off college campuses and making everyone walk on eggshells and replacing let's not see color with let's see it always and everywhere, formerly the position of the Ku Klux Klan. It'd be so easy to win elections if we would just drop this shit. Now that is excellent analysis. And that's very good from Bill Maher. Again, a leftist, or perhaps better, a liberal, who sees clearly the real danger facing the Democratic Party and its lurch to the Marxist left. But there are little signs indicating that Maher's warnings are going to be heeded by the current makeup of the Democrat Party. Already, there were reports that the Democrats are looking past Nancy Pelosi's tenure. She's an octogenarian. She's 80 years old. She's not going to be around much longer. And frankly, I don't think the Democrats stand a prayer in the midterms if their dithering candidate, presidential candidate, ends up sitting in the Oval Office daily dribbling on himself. But pundits are recognizing that if the same amount of Democrats vote against Pelosi for the speakership as did back in January of 2019, which is about 15 of them, she's toast. She's not going to win the speakership. Now, while few believe that that's actually going to happen, Democrats are openly talking about looking past Pelosi to what the future Democrat leadership will look like. And frankly, I don't see anything good coming out of it. Good meaning that is for the Democrats. I don't think their move to the hard left, which they've clearly been doing of late, like Bill Maher has noticed, I don't think that's going to help them in the least. And if anything, I think it's only going to radically benefit the new right, the nationalist populist right. But first, before we get into that, make sure you download your free gift by clicking on the link below. It's called our Fake News Antidote. It's a compilation of about 20 sites that I go to for my news each and every day. All conservative sites, all celebrating Trump and nationalist populism. And look, we need these news resources now more than ever. So you can download your own copy of our Fake News Antidote completely free at the link down below in the pinned comment section. And have a ready list of your go-to sites that you'll definitely enjoy, and it's going to inspire you throughout this whole crazy election process. And it's yours absolutely free by clicking on the link below. It is my gift to you. All right, so why is this lurch to the left bad news for the Democrats and wonderful news for the Republicans? Well, it's because we do actually have some precedent for what happens when the center-left collapses, as it were, and the party as a whole moves to the radical left. And we have some evidence of what at least can happen to us coming out of Europe. And if that pattern that holds true of Europe in general applies to us in the States, then we can expect something comparable to happen here. So what we've seen going on throughout Europe is basically the collapse of the center left. Okay, so this would be the Nancy Pelosi left, right? The Joe Biden left, the Hillary Clinton, the old white bougie. And by the way, I do mean old. The Democratic leadership is stunningly old. Biden is hitting 80. Pelosi is 80. Steny Hoyer, who's second only to Nancy Pelosi, is like 82. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous. So this is your old left, quite literally, right? This is your old bougie white center-left Democrat. And then, of course, you have your new Democrat, which is the BLM, Antifa, Bernie Sanders, Marxist Socialist Democrat. It's represented by the Squad, right? Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, and the like. All right, so Europe has a similar structure to it, though usually they'll have a different party. So they'll have several parties on the left, each representing an increasing move away from the political center in terms of their respective, in terms of their spectrum. So they'll have several parties on the left, several parties on the right. And for decades, generally speaking, a moderate center-right party has dominated European politics. So you think of Angela Merkel's Christian Democratic Union, you think of the Tories in Britain, although Labour, of course, with Tony Blair has had their successes periodically. It's more or less your mainstream globalist center-right, center-left party that's been dominant since the Second World War. What's happened of late is that center's basically collapsed. And now what were once peripheral parties are now the new mainstream. And so you have the so-called far right and the definitely so-called far left. Now, the far right, what we prefer on this channel, is simply called the new consensus, the nationalist populist right. It's the one that's been making massive gains throughout Europe. And of course, here in the United States too, with Donald Trump revitalizing the Republican Party. But not always. Sometimes the far left wins. But here's the interesting pattern that we're seeing in Europe. So we saw it in Italy, okay, with the populist left five-star movement when they rose to power a couple of years back. We saw it in Greece with the populist left Syriza movement when they came into power about 4 years ago or so. And we also have been seeing it in Germany, interestingly enough, in Thuringia, where the far-left Die Linke party has been so dominant. But what's so fascinating here is that in each of the examples I just gave, so that's Italy, Greece, and Germany, what followed after the political center had been smashed by this new left, the populist left, is that it made room for the eventual rise and success of the nationalist populist right. Once the populist left smashes the center and overturns the status quo, they seem to do two things. First, they open up opportunities for other third parties, this is again particularly in Europe, to come in like, you know, the new nationalist right parties. But secondly, we're finding that the political left always disappoints. And this is largely because their economic solutions are radically problematic. All the while they leave the borders completely open, right? And they turn to left-wing identity politics. So the populist left may succeed in smashing the centrist status quo, the center left. But they have yet to show that they can actually hold on to power for very much longer after that. Greece has since returned to the right after 4 years of Syriza. The AfD, the Alternative for Germany, is the second most popular, if not the most popular party in Thuringia. And Matteo Salvini, the Lega Party, as well as the Brothers of Italy, they're just counting down the days to their next election when they're going to completely overturn Five Star, which has become one of the most unpopular parties in the entire nation. So all of this is to say that if the far left takes over the Democratic Party, and I believe that it will, that's the pattern we're seeing in Europe, and if it has happened in Europe, if that pattern is replicated here, I think we're going to see a Democratic Party implode and a very powerful nationalist populist Republican Party rising like never before. Now, before you go, make sure to like this video, comment down below, and subscribe to my channel. And you will definitely want to check out my latest video, just uploaded it, on how stunning evidence has emerged that may indeed overturn the presidential election as Nevada tosses 153,000 ballots and President Trump gains in Georgia. You are not going to want to miss this. So make sure to click on the link, and I will see you over there. God bless.